Imagine you are in this situation. You are taking care of an ill loved one, and you have to give this person prescription medication. And these are the directions for the prescription. The problem is, you cannot read well enough to follow them. This is a situation that's true for millions of Americans. Today, I want to discuss the issue of illiteracy, and I will explain how illiteracy is a major burden for all of us, and I will tell you how you can help deal with illiteracy through an organization called First Book. I have learned more about illiteracy by doing research on it, as well as being involved in First Book by donating books and being a volunteer for the organization. We'll begin by looking at how illiteracy hurts everyone, not just those who have difficulty reading. Illiteracy is a pervasive problem that has many consequences. To quote Greg Toppo in his article in USA Today, 32 million adults in the USA, or about 1 in 7, are saddled with so low literacy skills that it would be tough for them to read anything more challenging than a children's picture book or to understand a medication's side effects listed on a pill bottle. Pierre Thomas from ABC News in his article, Living in the Shadows of Literacy in America, explains that 27 million adults in America are unable to complete a job application. Dr. Erin Marcus wrote an article entitled The Silent Epidemic, The Health Effects of Illiteracy for the New England Journal of Medicine. And in that article she said 12% of U.S. adults cannot read and understand basic documents. This includes things like transportation schedules, food labels, and medicine labels. And Thomas from ABC News gives us an example of a woman named Monica Baxley of Chipley, Florida. Ms. Baxley dropped out of school in the 9th grade. She could barely read, yet she kept it a secret from her friends and her family and even from her husband. She found it difficult to drive because she couldn't read the road signs. She didn't vote because she couldn't read the ballots. She didn't go to the doctor because she couldn't fill out the forms of the doctor. To quote Ms. Baxley, she said, "I cried a lot over this when I was alone and just would wonder what could be done, if there was any help out there for me." Finally, she did learn to read at age 41. Illiteracy is connected to many serious problems. Some of those are economic problems. Gail Sessoms, in the article The Effects of Illiteracy on Business from the Houston Chronicle, said that illiteracy costs U.S. businesses and society $225 billion annually. This comes from lost workforce productivity as well as unemployment and crime. To quote Sessoms, she says, "Businesses compete in a global economy that requires increasingly higher levels of education and training. Illiteracy among American workers threatens the ability of businesses to compete on a global level." Anthony Cree, in the article The Economic and Social Cost of Illiteracy, which was published on the World Literacy Foundation website, said this: "Employees with poor literacy are more likely to have work-related accidents because they cannot read or understand written health and safety regulations and warnings or instructions on how to safely operate machinery. This puts both themselves and their coworkers at risk, increases the need and cost of medical services, leading to higher absenteeism and damages long-term productivity." Taking a look at this graph on education and income from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics website, on the left side in green is median weekly earnings. On the right in red is the unemployment rate. And as you move up, there's a higher amount of education. So clearly, when you have a higher amount of education, you're likely to have a higher income and less likely to have unemployment. Another connection to illiteracy is health. According to the Project Read website, people with poor literacy skills are less likely to get their blood pressure checked, less likely to own a first aid kit, and less likely to own a fire extinguisher. Cree goes on to say that there is a lack of awareness of contraceptive methods among the illiterate, which increases the likelihood of an unplanned and adolescent pregnancy, which in turn decreases the likelihood that someone will continue his or her education. Dr. Marcus, in her article, talks about a 64-year-old male patient with heart disease and diabetes who she was treating. And she said this patient was not properly taking his medication. And to quote her, she says the following: "We quietly asked him to read his list of medications aloud. Haltingly, he told us he couldn't do it. Born in the rural South, he had left school in the 2nd grade. He lived alone. He had been able to support himself as a gas station attendant and handyman, but he had never learned to read." Another problem is simply kids not having access to books. The Reading is Fundamental website says that fourth graders who reported having 25 or more books in their website had higher scores on reading tests than children who didn't. And on the website, The Impact of Literacy, which is maintained by the Central Georgia Technical College, they say the following. Learning to read begins long before a child enters school. It begins when parents read to their children, buy their children books, and encourage their children to read. The research is clear. Parents who are poor readers don't read to their children as often as parents who are strong readers. Children who are not read to enter school less prepared for learning to read than other children. But there is a way that you can help with this problem by getting involved with First Book. First Book helps increases literacy by providing children with books and encouraging them to read. I conducted an interview with Helen Kegler, who is the chair of the First Book chapter at the University of Cincinnati Blue Ash. She said that First Book is a non-profit organization whose purpose is to provide access to new books to children in need. And the First Book website says the following. At First Book, our innovative approaches tackle the single biggest barrier to the development of literacy, access to books. We don't want to fight illiteracy, we want to end it. First Book has given out over 100 million books to children in need. Why is this important? Well, according to the Reading is Fundamental website, people who read well have higher rates of employment and better jobs. It increases their personal income and individual economic well-being. It increases voter participation as well as volunteerism and civic engagement. And people who read well have better health and more effective health care. Now, this is how First Book works, according to the First Book website. Organizations that work with low-income students apply, and First Book will support them with such things as giving them access to books that can be purchased at a very deep discount. In many cases, they donate free books, and they also will provide grant money for specific reading programs. One example is Los Molinos Elementary School. This is in Northern California, and 85% of the students there are low income. And First Book provided every one of the kids there with a new book for Christmas. To find out more about First Book, I want to show you this video from ABC World News.
Kalia Bailey is one of millions of American girls and boys. 45% of all our children who live in low-income families. Books are luxuries in many of their homes.
We are here to celebrate the 100 millionth book.
20 years ago, Kyle Zimmer founded First Book, which brings books to children in need. 100 million books now and counting.
I've seen the light in their eyes go on. They can't believe they get to keep books of their own.
It makes a lifelong difference. Studies show a child's ability to understand stories jumps by 20% when there are books in the home.
Read both of those.
Way back in 1992, Crystal Stewart got a book from First Book. She was the oldest of 4 kids of a working mom, and she just loved to read. Still does.
It almost sounds like reading helped you get away.
It did.
From the tough parts of your childhood.
It did, yeah.
Today it was Chase Kennedy who received the official 100 millionth book from First Book.
100 million books, and it is just the beginning because so many of the 30 million children living in low-income homes tonight need the gift of reading, and we love the way Dr. Seuss himself wrote it. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go.
So here's how you can help, and this comes from the First Book website. First of all, you can tell schools and other organizations who could benefit from First Book about the organization. Also, you can donate money to First Book, and you can also volunteer for First Book. And all of this can be done from their website, which is firstbook.org or firstbook.org. One example that I'd like to tell you about is an event that I was involved in. I donated 70 copies of the book Green Eggs and Ham to one of the Cincinnati chapters of First Book, and the books were in turn given to students in Blue Ash Elementary. I also had the opportunity to read the book to the kids. In addition to that, I set up a Green Eggs and Ham Lego display to just get them more excited about the book. So let's review. I have discussed the issue of illiteracy. I have explained how illiteracy affects all of us, and I've explained how you can help through the organization First Book. I have emailed a link to you that you can use to support First Book by volunteering, by donating, or you simply can just like them on Facebook or subscribe to their email newsletter. Thank you.